This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Mabuhay! You're watching the Business Portal, your gateway to business trends and opportunities. And I'm your host, Howell Mabalo.
Good day, everyone. You're watching the Business Portal on the corporate world, your gateway to business trends and opportunities. And I'm your host, Renelyn Tan Casillejos. Have you ever thought about starting your own business, perhaps from scratch? But if there's one thing that we'll be sharing with you in terms of this episode, it's how you can buy or sell your business, not from scratch, but if it's already existing and you need help from someone who just wants to help you run another business. It's my pleasure to introduce to you on the show a business broker from Link Philippines, Miss Eleanor Carbonell. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having us over.
Welcome to the show, ma'am. And I'd like to ask you, for a lot of our viewers, perhaps the term business brokerage is new to them. So we hear a lot of brokers, perhaps in the real estate industry and in the automotive industry, but when it becomes business brokerage, what does that mean?
Actually, business brokers is like an intermediary. We represent the buyers and sellers of businesses, and it is very pioneering in this country, but it is not new in the rest of the world. I mean, I practiced business brokering in California for 10 years.
10 years?
Yes,
wow.
So what we do is if a buyer wants to buy a business, they engage us on a buyer mandate. If a seller wants to sell a business, then we go and represent them and have them sign an exclusive engagement to list their business.
Wow. So with Link Philippines, how long has it been here in the country and where did it start?
Actually, in the Philippines, it's a very pioneering effort. It started in I think it's April last year.
Okay.
So it's only been a little over a year. But in New Zealand, we are over 20 years old. And then we are headquartered in New Zealand, but we are operating in 5 countries. And
wow.
Yes, we are in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, the US, and of course the Philippines. The Philippines, as I said, is a very pioneering effort. We're new, but as of today, we have over 200 business brokers already.
Wow, that's a lot. And when it comes to industries, what are the different types of industries that perhaps you buy and sell from?
Well, we really don't have a specialty on any kind of industry because business brokering is representing of businesses for sale. So therefore, in our inventory of businesses for sale now, we have manufacturing, we have distribution, we have IT companies, we have restaurants, it really depends on the experience of the broker, where they can, on the people, let's say, who just started, maybe they would go for the smaller spas and salons, but for people who have the experience, then they go for the larger companies. So there is really no one segment, but primarily a varied group of companies that we represent.
So when it comes to product offerings, what can a client expect from Link in terms of, for example, they realize, okay, I have a business, it's time for me to sell it. What is the process that I need to go through if they want to go through Link?
Yes, selling a business is a process, and that's how we differentiate ourselves from the rest of the people out there, because the Link process is already proven and tested. So if you go through the process, then more than likely you will close the sale. So first we list the business, and then after we list the business, we inform our clients that the business is listed for, confidentiality purposes is very important to us.
Okay.
Because we are now representing financial statements, asset, stock,
Liabilities.
right, liabilities. So there's a lot of things that go into the listing of the business that really highly confidential. So we take pride in the confidentiality. Then we bring to market, when we bring it to market, what happens is then we are actually using the network of Link, and Link being, headquartered in New Zealand, operating in 5 countries, we have a network. We have invested, the company has invested in a software that really is very superior. In fact, more superior than the ones I was used to in California.
Wow, that's great
Yes,
to know.
so yes, and that software really gives us the edge in terms of helping us value the company. What is the value of the company and how do we value the company? Then also uses the network. When we put our listings on our website, then it is accessed by all of the brokers worldwide.
So we're talking about buying a business.
Yeah.
Is the process the same if, for example, they want to sell their business?
Yes, selling a business is the same. They sign a listing. Then what happens is when they sell the business, then obviously they give us all the confidential information.
Right.
And then we tell them that, we are going to, when they engage us, they're not just engaging 1 or 2 brokers, they're engaging the company that has 200 brokers. So we market it that way. We market it to our network, again, that same software that we have. And so it is really, I think that they get a lot more of representation by using Link.
I'm curious to know, do people find it difficult to buy or sell a business where there's so much confidentiality? I'm thinking if I want to buy a business, I'd like to know what's the company name.
Oh,
but in your case,
yes.
you said there's this process of confidentiality, which I understand, of course.
Yeah, so what happens is, so let's say we have XYZ company listed for sale, and then we've advertised it in our network, and so a buyer calls and say, I saw your ad in your network, or I saw it in your magazine, because we
Right.
do also have a magazine, and so we have them sign what we call a non-disclosure agreement.
Okay.
So once they've signed a non-disclosure agreement, what that says is that the information we're providing them is highly confidential and cannot be disclosed. And then at that point in time, obviously, if they say, I want to see the financial statements, I want to know the name of the company, I want to know where they're located, how many employees, what product line, then we're able to release that information after they've signed a non-disclosure agreement.
Okay, so it's not really blindly
Yes.
buying or selling
Oh,
a
no,
business.
no, yes.
But with that non-disclosure agreement, everything becomes available to the
Yeah.
client.
And also what happens is when a client decides, okay, I've seen enough, now I want more, and so we say to the client, the buyer, we say, when you deliver an offer,
Right.
when an offer is delivered, there are contingencies of sale, and one of the contingencies is due diligence. So they
Of
say,
course.
okay, now I have financial statements that shows, 12 million in gross sales. So now, of course, that's a piece of paper.
Right.
So now that has to be verified, and so during the due diligence, the buyer actually has the ability to check the books and records of the seller after of course, the signing of the non-disclosure agreement and also executing an offer to purchase.
I'd like to ask you, Eleanor, who is your ideal client? I'm not sure if it's just for SMEs or is it only for big corporations? Is there a specific capital amount that they need to meet in order to qualify as the ideal client?
Well, actually, Link's market is really the small to medium size, and this is where in the Philippines it is really a need. There is
Okay.
nobody representing the small to medium sized companies. Of course, there are intermediaries representing large companies, Jollibee acquiring Mang Inasal, for instance. That's not really our market.
Okay.
Our market is the small to medium sized companies that are wanting to sell because the owner is retiring, there is no succession in place, they're leaving for outside the country, kids don't
see.
want to own the business of the dad. So there's a lot of, so our ideal company would be one that is hopefully really successful in terms of profitability, stability, good product line, and perhaps a niche in the marketplace.
How much are we looking into when you say small and medium enterprises?
Well, you know, we can list the business. I mean, there are listings that are as small as, you know, 1 million pesos, but we also have one that's 500 million. So there is a spectrum of businesses, because on the manufacturing side or the distribution side, you know, it's obviously larger because there's an infrastructure.
Right.
But on the smaller side, we're talking about restaurants and salon and, you know, spa, so they're on the smaller side.
That's actually a very hopeful way of looking into the industry, because what you mentioned earlier, some children, they don't want to continue their family business,
Yes.
or there's really just perhaps another interest that the business owner may have. So it's also a good way to see how this business, who of course you've cared for the longest time, can still be continued by another person.
Yes, you know, sometimes people don't realize that, you know, you need the second or third generation to run it. But if the second and third generation, like today, the millennials, you know, they don't want to run their parents'
Right.
business, so, but they want something else. So then they sell the business and then they get capital, and then so the father or the mother gives them the capitalization to start their own. In other words, carry their own brand. So there is some of that. But of course, if it is a good business, then it can be continued, not necessarily by family members, but also by others who may have the financial wherewithal, managerial capacity, and experience.
Right. A lot of people, when they look into a particular industry, they look at competitors. But in your case, as you said, you're pioneering here in the Philippines. What can you say will be your competitive edge to other people who want to help sell or buy a business as well?
Well, when we say we have no competition today, it's because we have so much more that we bring to the table. We have the Link network, we have the very experienced brokers, we have systems in place, we have, you know, everything that's tried and tested for 20 years, over 20 years in New Zealand and other parts of the world. The competition might come from, you know, a one-man show operating from his garage, you know, and it's not really competition to us, but they can try. And then when that person gets that listing, how is he going to market it? You know, how is he going to access the market that would give the seller the best price at the shortest possible time?
Right.
So therefore, that's our edge is, you know, hey, when you hire me, you are hiring 200 brokers in essence. Yes.
That's really what I think is a good edge, especially for people who don't know anything about how can they sell a business, how can they buy a business.
Correct.
Can you perhaps share one or two success stories, without of course naming the names, but any success stories you've seen in the course of the 1 year you've been here in the Philippines?
Yes. You know, this is really, I'm very proud of this gentleman in our office because he was relatively new and how he was being taught. Now, some of us are more experienced than others. And so one of the things that we tell our brokers is when you start, you can't be timid. So you have to do door knocking. So this particular gentleman, he started door knocking. And he got a listing by the door knocking. And it is a laundromat. And so he got the listing, and then it was sold almost immediately on it was, I think, multiple offers.
Wow.
So then he sold it, so now there's multiple offers. So then he was enticed to do another one. So then he did another one, and then the other broker said, you know, I had a buyer on your first one, so now please find me another one so that my buyer does not feel out of place that he didn't win on that situation. So he got another one, and then they closed it again. So it's like a success story, not of a larger transaction, but a smaller transaction of a person who just started. I mean, he just, you know, Link also prides itself in the training that we provide our brokers. I mean, it's a very extensive, very good training school that you can learn to be a business broker. And this guy, obviously, he did very well, you know, dot the I, cross the T, and he was a very obedient student.
Wow, you talk about the laundromat. I know it's a very popular business today. Every city in Manila, I think, has laundromats. And so just from that experience, you also mentioned that the brokers, they can sometimes do door knocking. What other means do they find these businesses? Of course, I know you have your website
Of
where
course.
people go, but what else are the other ways for you to
Well,
find
we have
them?
the one thing that we really take pride in is that we publish a business broker magazine. We are on our
Okay.
second edition.
What's the name?
Well, it's called Business Brokers Magazine.
Oh,
it's a
okay.
link. And in fact, yesterday I had a call in Shangri-La, and the owner of this business happens to be a CPA, and she owned restaurants and several other businesses. And how she found our company was through our magazine.
Wow.
And then we also, of course, we register with, trade shows. We were
Right.
recently at the SM, and so we had a booth there, and
Yes.
people generated. And even through that, there were magazines and brochures that were given out. And so, we've generated calls from that. But more importantly, I think it's people like you who are educating the marketplace about us. We were featured by Kathy Young of Market Edge. I'm sorry, but because of that, the awareness of business broker representation in the Philippines has really kind of increased 2 notches up. So
I
now,
agree.
yes, so we have become a little bit more popular, and people are getting to know about us. And of course, in this country, the most important is networking.
Yes.
You join your your social environment, your community, your golf group, your whatever, and that would bring the business.
Social media today plays a really big part in any business, be it big, be it small. In your case, does Link use social media to your advantage as well?
Oh, yes, definitely. Another one, they were in the first class, we call them batch number 1. And this couple, they, when we were going through training, they were asked, how did you get your listings? And what they did is through their Facebook accounts,
Wow.
they just kind of blast. I guess it's I am of a different generation, but there is a new generation here. And they said, yes, we used our Facebook accounts, and we say, hey, this is what we're doing now. And people started calling.
That's
Friends of theirs
great.
who know people who own businesses started calling, So I think the wave of the future is really the social media.
Wow, that's very inspiring to hear, because I think of a lot of my friends who also just want to start their business, and sometimes they have zero knowledge, but there's this passion in them. So at least there's this avenue that they can look into where they don't have to start from scratch. They might consider looking into buying a business that's already profitable, and they can just continue.
Yes. There are different ways to buy a business. And from a banking perspective, when I finance companies, I really looked at the fact that, if you start a new one, okay, a borrower comes to me and say, I'm starting a business. That's from zero with nothing. And oftentimes, statistics will say that on the average, it will take 3 years before you can even see any return on your
Yes.
investment. So therefore, starting from zero is risky. But if you are buying an existing business that has an operation, you bring forth your experience, and then instead of spending the money on the startup, what you do is you spend the money on advertising to let people know who you are and what you do. And so now you're increasing your revenue.
Yes.
So it's the revenue that's increasing that would support the business, as opposed to, you're spending money on leasehold improvements and infrastructure and chairs and equipment, and then you open your door and you have no sales.
Right.
So I think that buying an existing business is significantly more beneficial to first-time owners.
I would agree with that. Is there a website that they can go to
Yes,
if they
there-
want to just look around?
Yes,
and see?
if you Google Link, there would be a website, and that website, in fact, as a buyer, when you go to the Link or Link, the Link website, you can register as a buyer, and in the registration, you can put forth your requirements. You say, okay, I want to be in the manufacturing industry, or the food business, spa, whatever. There are different industries that you can check out, and then you can say the capitalization requirement or the purchase price is this much, 1 million pesos or 2 million, and then you can put that on. And what happens is when a broker, once we get our listing, you know, we have to advertise it through this website, then it gives notification to you, a
Wow.
registered buyer, and say, hey, this looks like it's something that was in your criteria for acquisition, so therefore, it will tell you that we have a new listing. So then, so that's a good thing. Yeah.
There's really no excuse now to say I'll do it later because technology is being used by Link, and with just that notification, you might be on your way to your new business.
Yes. As a matter of fact, when I did business broking in California for a long time, we didn't have all this. You know, we had what we call a prospect tracking system, but compared to what we call the Lion, which is a New Zealand million dollar investment, it's significantly more. It really does. It's a customer service software that can tell, you know, we can track our prospects, the sellers, the buyers, the industry. We can put in all the information confidentially, you know. So there's a lot of things that technology, it's almost like it leapfrog, you know, it leapfrog what the paperwork. And so now we just have to catch up and say, okay, hey, there are applications that is beneficial to us.
So currently, what are the different businesses that are most popular that you see on the website?
Well, you know, it's interesting that there are so many food, and I think the Filipinos are known for, despite the fact that they have cooks at home, they love to eat out.
We love food.
So therefore, there's a lot of restaurants, and oftentimes a seller would say, you know, this is a good restaurant, maybe I should open one. And oftentimes, you may not really know the intricacies of you know, running a restaurant, and you start one from scratch, zero, right? So now you have this kitchen that's ₱1 million, and you know, furniture, fixture, equipment. You open up, and now you have no money for advertising.
Right.
So how are you going to survive? So restaurants are really very popular, and it's easy to sell because, you know, you can have a chef, and then you just have to manage it. But of course, the good thing too is the capitalization is not significant because we have right now we have a manufacturer distribution, and the listing price is 150 million pesos. So that's a little bit bigger than most businesses that would need financing.
Right.
And the buyer of that may probably be a company, you know, or investors, you know, that may want to invest in the company instead of buying the entire company. Maybe they would want to infuse capital. So as I said, it's really a wide spectrum, but the easier businesses, the easier to sell.
I'm learning so much from you, Eleanor, but for now, we'll just hold that thought for a short break. And to our viewers, don't go away, we'll be right back.